Minister McEntee will have her introductory remarks, followed by Minister of State Brown. And then we'll have a presentation from Dr. Sean Redmond of the University of Limerick. And after that, then we'll move on to some questions and answers. I know there's a couple of members of the media in attendance today, so we might start with their questions and then we'll move it on and broaden it out to the wider group who's attending today. So I think without further ado, I'll hand over to Minister McEntee to give her opening address, please. Minister.
Thanks, Niall. Well, good afternoon to everyone, and just please to firstly thank everyone for joining us. I'm delighted to see that we have so many online for what is really, I think, an important launch, as Niall has mentioned, of 3 significant and groundbreaking reports, but also of a new community intervention programme, all of which are part of the Greentown project, and all of which really represents the culmination of 5 years of work led through the University of Limerick, but interacting with my own department, Department of Children, state agencies, international experts, local experts, all focused on organised crime, youth justice, child welfare, community development. And I want to start maybe just acknowledging my colleague James Brown, who's on the line, who's going to speak, but also Dr. Sean Redmond, who has led a lot of this research, and to sincerely thank him and all of his colleagues and all of those who have been involved. You know, we can see already through the acknowledgement of the original Greentown report, which was published back in 2016, where they have been awarded first place in a European Crime Prevention Award, really acknowledging that this is a significant piece of research. And from a justice point of view and from my own point of view, it is absolutely significant in informing the work that we are doing in developing new policy and developing new legislation, and most importantly, the particular focus on our younger people. The message that we want to send out very clearly is that this information will be used to, I suppose, prevent younger people from getting into a life of crime, but also where we can work to and highlight a way out and an exit for younger people who are already entrapped in a life of crime. Maybe just briefly to touch on the original report, this really was groundbreaking work which highlighted and gave scientific evidence for the first time of our younger people involved in these criminal networks. It highlighted that while a vast majority of younger people that get into crime, the normal routes and the work that's done through Garda Síochána, crime intervention programs and others, they do get through this and they do come out on the other side. But for a small number of people, these criminal networks and gangs, I suppose through luring them in with the promise of a better life, a life that we know really does not exist, they become entrapped and they become ensnared through coercion and through exploitation. And obviously what we want to do is to try and stop that. The follow-on research, the 3 reports that we're launching today, the Red Town report, the Blue Town, and then the more extensive national prevalence survey, focus even further on the types of criminal networks, how they operate, the type of criminal activity that's taking place. It's focused on, in particular, certain towns and areas, looking at all of this, but also taking a significant amount of the research that was done from the original Greentown project, working with our juvenile liaison officers and really setting the scene of the type of and the scale of problem that we're dealing with here. And it identifies that there's about 1,000 young people who are particularly in this situation. Really, I suppose all of this research, as I've said, the crux of this really is that we need to use this, and we want to use this research to make sure that we can support children and their communities and prevent them from moving into this life of crime, but also to provide a way out for those who already find themselves entrapped. And the new model of intervention that we're launching today that has come from this research, we hope will be able to help and go a significant way in addressing these issues. The pilot programs, 2 of which we're calling the White Town project and the Yellow Town project, are currently well underway in terms of their development. They will be fully supported through the Department of Justice with significant funding and will run for the next 3 years. They'll be overseen by quite a significant oversight body, but also will have continuous engagement with the research team in the University of Limerick. And there will be 4 key underpinning elements to these pilots. Firstly, it will focus on network disruption. So how can we, through the work with Garda Síochána and our experts and our teams, identify these networks, identify children that are vulnerable, identify the criminal networks and those that are targeting them, and to disrupt that type of engagement that's happening. Secondly, we're looking at improving community efficacy, and that's about, I suppose, supporting communities and helping them to withstand the influence from these criminal networks, allowing them and providing them with support to take back their communities, their towns, their villages, their community spaces. Thirdly, focusing on improving socioeconomic and pro-social opportunities. So that's about investment. It's about making sure that there is supports and that we can provide those supports within the communities to encourage young children and indeed their families as well involved in these networks to re-engage in school, to re-engage in different types of training, education, to sustain employment. And fourthly, then, it's about looking at the family and the wider network, because we know for a lot of these children where they are targeted, perhaps they might not have that family network, or indeed in some instances, the family are very much part of the criminal activity that is taking place. So it's about working with these families, working with the children, and seeing how we can provide, I suppose, greater support to help them to get out of these situations that they're in. So this is an extremely important piece of work, and the pilot that we're launching really will go a significant way towards trying to address this issue. But of course, the pilot itself won't work on its own. And so we've been doing and working on a number of things within the Department of Justice. Last week, you will have seen that we launched legislation, or that we published legislation, which will for the first time criminalise the grooming or the exploitation of young children into crime. So it's acknowledging not just the crime itself, but the significant and the detrimental impact that this is having on these young people, some as young as 8 or 9 or 10 that have been lured into this life. It acknowledges the impact it has on their families, their wider communities and society. And it sends a very clear message, firstly to the young people and their families, that we are there to support them and we want to help them and to break this link between them and these criminal networks. But also, I hope it sends a very clear signal to these criminal networks that we are taking this seriously and that this is not something we're going to tolerate. All of this work will also feed into a huge amount of other work that's being done, and my colleague James Brown is going to maybe talk further on the new youth justice strategy that we will launch in the coming weeks and that he will lead in. But it will also feed into, our youth diversion programs and other various different pilots and programs that are being worked through and that currently exist to make sure that they are based on the most up-to-date expertise and knowledge. And this is why this work really is so significant and so important. So I just want to really sincerely thank everybody for their involvement. As I said, this is 5 years really of work that has culminated in the launch today of the Red Town, the Blue Town, the survey, but also this new pilot programme. And the most important thing is that following on from today, we continue to engage. This is about, I suppose, a whole of society approach where we are interacting in between the research piece, the policy development, legislation and Garda Síochána, and most importantly with our communities. And I really think that this research is significant in allowing us to do that. So I'm going to pass you over to Minister of State James Brown, who's maybe just going to talk a little bit further about the youth justice strategy. But thank you again for joining us. Thank you for your involvement, to many of you who have been part of this. And I look forward to us continuing to work with you in the Department of Justice as we do everything that we can to make sure that younger people are kept away from this life of crime, that we break this link between them and the criminal networks, and most importantly, that we hold those who are responsible for this accountable, and we send a very clear message to them that this won't be tolerated in our society. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. Now, if Minister Brown wants to give his remarks, please. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Niall. And I just want to thank Minister McEntee for her contribution. And as Minister McEntee outlined, this programme specifically seeks to counter the risk of children being recruited into criminality. I want to thank Sean Redmond and his team, the Department of Justice and the University of Limerick, for their work and research and efforts in this. And I think it really is a fantastic project and it deserves its full support. And I do think the Greentown project, it will have far-reaching benefits for young people who are vulnerable, and to have create opportunities for them to move away from the areas of criminality and into other positive social opportunities within their life. What is evident from much of the report, that a lot of it is drug related, and this is a problem not just in major urban settings but also in rural settings. And the government is very much committed to tackling this drug situation in terms of young people, but also right across our communities and how it affects and impacts on our society. I look forward to the commencement of the community intervention programme and the further rollout of multi-agency programmes to help steer young people further away from the life of crime that are very much often lured into by the promises of a type of lifestyle that just simply doesn't exist once they get in there, but then very often find themselves trapped within the life of criminality and very difficult for them to get back out. The new youth justice strategy, as mentioned by Minister McEntee, that will be brought to government very soon and will be launched in the next coming weeks. And that will provide a framework within which we will all be able to draw on a full range of different programs to help young people to steer away from crime. And it's very much designed for tailored intervention to meet the needs of specific communities and specific cohorts of young people, and in particular hard to reach young people within our community. The new strategy has been developed under the guidance of an expert steering group. A huge amount of work has gone into youth justice strategy as well over the last number of years. And the group was tasked with advising and guiding the development of a new strategy and consider the full range of issues connected with children to try and have a whole of government approach and a whole multi-agency approach into that intervention, both in terms of people who are veering towards crime, who are coming into contact with the justice system, but also those young children and young adults who are finding it very difficult, as I say, to get away from the criminal activity, even when they actually want to. The research shows strong links between youth offending and socioeconomic circumstances, as well as child and family welfare issues. And therefore, it's crucial to remember that offending behaviour can't be considered in isolation. It's not a choice by young people to get involved in criminal activity. They are being lured in there, but also because of the lack of opportunities within their communities, because of their socioeconomic backgrounds, they are easily targeted by criminals who are offering them easy opportunities. A key focus of the youth justice strategy is considering how youth justice policy might be more closely aligned to other child and youth policies and to promotion of community and local development. As I said, really what that means is that all the agencies should be working together to intervene for young people, to get them, not only to get them out of crime, but to give them an alternative pathways in life. In this regard, prevention and early intervention is a key priority, and I can't stress enough the importance of bringing all the relevant agency and programs together, including our schools, to ensure that we provide a holistic wraparound response to the needs of children and young people. And I should say, like, the youth justice strategy, it is designed in a way to ensure that this is not just theoretical. This is just not something that people can talk about as a great policy, but that the actual agencies on the ground can intervene. They can intervene at an early stage and intervene in a collaborative way to ensure that nobody is being left behind. The new programme for government, Our Shared Future, contains a number of commitments to build stronger, safer communities within the area. A number of actions have been identified, including the establishment of an expert forum on antisocial behaviour. And we had the first forum meeting on the new antisocial behaviour forum in October. We're developing the documents of reference for that. But what is essential as well, with the antisocial behaviour forum, with the youth justice strategy, with the Greentown project, and a number of other projects that are ongoing, that all of these can provide a full framework for our society, for our communities, who can come together when those interventions are needed, whether on an individual basis, or on a community basis, or on a family basis, that all the different levels can come together and can intervene for our communities. And there are potential areas of commonality between the youth justice strategy and the antisocial behaviour strategy, and it will be ensuring that any report or any actions to come out of the antisocial behaviour forum will dovetail with the youth justice strategy and with any other projects such as Greentown projects as well. And really the key about all of these, I think, is a realization and an application of the understanding that policing is not simply about the Gardaí. The Gardaí, when they intervene, they do have a certain role to play. But what we have to ensure, as I say, is that there's early intervention to get people away, prevent them from going into crime in the first place, or if they are involved in a crime, to direct them away from criminal activity. And we can see that on the ground, that there's not only the state agencies, but county council as well, in my view, have a huge role to play. And I think we see that in other countries, county councils have a big role to play in terms of community involvement. We don't see that as much, I think, in the county councils here in Ireland, but we are starting to get more and more involvement with the county councils as well, I think. And that really what this ties in with a community safety policy which has been developed by the Department of Justice, and in line with the recommendations of the Commission on the future of policing in Ireland, which will form the basis of a new policing and community safety bill, which will define our policing structures as we're going forward. Before I conclude, I would like to echo Minister McEntee's comments in congratulating the Greentown project, the research that has gone behind it, the effort and determination by everybody involved in the Greentown project. And I think that was very much reflected in their deserved win in the European Crime Prevention Award. And I really think this will have a huge impact both in the pilot communities, but also I expect that will be successful and rolled out in the future. And it's about protecting vulnerable people from criminal exploitation and ensuring that we don't create more victims within our society. And I wish everybody the absolute best of luck with the implementation of this program. And I thank everybody's attendance here today. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Minister. Now we'll move on to Dr. Sean Redmond from the University of Limerick, who is going to give a presentation on the Greentown reports. Sean.
Thanks, Niall. Niall, could I just check whether I can share my screen?
I think Angie is...
Yeah, you should be able to do that now, Sean.
How's that?
Perfect.
Yep, we good?
Good.
Thank you, Minister McEntee. Thank you, Minister Brown. And thank you, colleagues, for joining us for the launch of the reports today. My name's Sean Redmond. I'm a social worker by profession, but a civil servant in the Department of Justice. And I'm assigned to the University of Limerick to help improve the evidence base for progressive reform of youth justice policy in Ireland. I've agreed 15 minutes for this presentation, and in that I'm going to try and outline the Greentown series of reports, which also involve my colleagues Catherine Norton and Owen Amira Daly, also from the University of Limerick. And I'm also going to try to outline our approach to programme design. As both ministers have kindly mentioned, this is a programme based on the best available knowledge, including a developing Irish evidence base. Before we get into the technical detail, I want you to imagine this boy. He's stuck in a toxic ecosystem, a situation he didn't choose to be born into. He lives in a backwater housing complex. His daily life is experienced in a criminalized bubble. It's a bubble created and sustained by the criminal gang that governs his estate. He is subject to coercive control. His parents do not protect him because they're compromised by drug debts owed to the network members. All of his friends share the same experience. They nearly think the same way, mostly in compliance with criminal norms encouraged by the network that he's part of. While he's exploited, he's also part of the regime that exploits others. The child gets no protection from his community. He's seen as a criminal first and a child second. Also, many of the residents in the estate he lives in are paralyzed into stoicism. Understandably, they choose not to bring problems on themselves for complaining about antisocial behavior and crime on their doorsteps. But this is a child. It's not a character on a computer-generated network or a crime statistic. He has a human right to be protected from exploitation. In a moment, I'm going to tell you about how we know about the circumstances of children like this and what we're planning to do about it. But for a second, let's just think about this child and his burden. In simple terms, understanding and trying to improve the child's circumstances is what the Greentown project is about. I want to give you a very quick summary of almost 5 years' work. This is the primary research that currently contributes to our intervention programme. Here are the network analyses of 3 anonymised but real locations in Ireland: Greentown, Bluetown, and Redtown. They were selected from national statistics, ranking burglary and drugs for sale and supply committed by minors. These offences are atypical for children in Ireland, and they're linked to multiple offences committed by children. The networks that you see are built using Garda detection and intelligence data to link suspects who have collaborated in burglary and drugs for sale and supply. The networks were created by Garda analysts, not the researchers, but they were built to our specifications. Our job was a deeper examination of these analyst constructed networks, interviewing specially selected local Garda with huge tacit knowledge of the individuals involved. We've replicated this study in 3 locations, and we'll be doing it again in another 2. Also on this slide, we have a prevalence study where we surveyed the national team of over 120 specialist juvenile liaison officers with vignettes taken from the Greentown study. From the survey, we estimate there could be up to 1,000 children across the state in a similar position to this child. I want to give you a quick insight now into how we got to know more about these children. This evidence is usually very hidden and very sensitive. The key building block for the Greentown studies is what we call twin site, a model we developed in the university. And on the picture here, you can see the setup for the interviews in the Garda station. The researcher is closest to us and the Garda respondent some 2 to 3 meters away. The Garda analysts produced 2 versions of the network map. Version A in the foreground is used by the researcher. Each individual is given a unique identifying reference, such as A1, A2, A3, so for each individual on the network. Version B, which is in the envelope on the far side of the photograph, has the same unique identifier, but in addition, it pinpoints the real name of the individual involved. This version is only ever seen by the Garda. The researcher only knows A1 as A1. But the Garda member knows the real name of A1, but both of us only call him A1 in conversations. This means that we can have very detailed conversations about a character who is real but remains anonymous. In the location being examined, 20 to 40 police respondents who have lots of knowledge about the individuals are specially selected by Garda management to take part in an interview, usually an hour long. And based on hours of cross-reference testimony by Garda members, TwinSight offers a very detailed account of how the network operates. But irrespective of the safeguards around anonymity, this was a huge leap of faith for Garda management, but I think it's one that's paid off. We were, for instance, able to paint this picture in Greentown of children involved in friendship networks, befriended and cultivated and groomed by mid-ranking young adults, who in turn were governed by individuals higher in the pecking order. We call these relationships associates because they referred mainly to criminal collaborations or based loosely on friendships. We also noticed another type of relationship which we called family, because they belong to a dominant family and kinship group in the neighborhood. These actors got the associates to do the work and take the risks. Young people in the family group appeared to be higher in the network than some associate adults. The relationships within the family and kinship network were much stronger and more resilient to interference than the associates. TwinSight helped us to really understand the multiple adversities bearing down on the child that we spoke about at the start of this presentation and his friends, and started to think what we can do about it. We saw similarities and differences in our replication studies. In Redtown, which was another provincial town, network participation appeared to be associated with the type of crime being committed. Burglary involved severely disadvantaged families where there was a high degree of chaos and evidence of passing on pro-criminal norms and coaching for children in committing crime. Redtown was also notable for the influence that one network member, actually a 16-year-old boy, could make in a tight group of siblings and peers. And also some young people were involved in retail and drugs sale and supply, where there was evidence of adults involved in hierarchical relationships that were not shown on the network because they had not been detected. Bluetown is a location in Dublin. Garda respondents described 4 different types of network. Network 1 was a robust family-based crime network responsible for burglaries, and it was hierarchical in nature. Network 2 was actually quite fragile, a friendship network involved in burglary and robbery offences that had largely broken up. Network 3 was an emerging drugs network grounded in peer relationships and their locality, in fact their neighbourhood. And Network 4 was a drugs network with external adult criminal influences. The adults, again, were not shown on this map because they had not been detected or were not in the local area. The conclusion here is that the networks are examples of what we call complex or wicked problems. And what we know about wicked problems is that it's really important to know their size and shape and what makes them tick, their character. This is how examining the whole network helps with understanding the operational consequences of intervening. This is a very top level account of our findings, and I invite you to read the studies. I'll move on now to program design. We had a little bit of help. Here are our design collaborators who worked with us for almost 2 years, international experts who are academic leaders in understanding illicit networks and organized crime. These experts helped us to figure out what was going on in Greentown. We also had our own experts in policing, child welfare, probation, youth interventions, law and policy, and community development. Our own experts who know the Irish context much better helped us to stress test our emerging ideas with real life experience and to hopefully avoid too many unintended consequences. We'll be continuing to cultivate and develop these networks as the Greentown programme is trialled, in particular sharing findings with other interested communities and also learning from their experiences. These are our outcomes for the programme that we plan, and we try and keep them pretty simple. The first is to reduce the influence of criminal networks on child offending, and also then improve the pro-social outcomes for children who are already involved in criminal networks. And our evidence base for the new Greentown programme includes, firstly, knowledge of international programs which appear to have efficacy in reducing network influence and helping children to exit. The primary research that we've undertaken in Ireland and that I've given you an outline of, and also our expert-led deliberative process. After lots of thought, this is an evidence-informed mission with flexibility and agility. It's not a prescribed programme. It needs excellent people, not just an effective plan. Network disruption, which is based on network analysis provided by my colleagues. Garda members will use legitimate means to disrupt certain influential individuals who've been linked to the recruitment of children. A ring-fence budget has also been secured to support community efficacy, and this simply means activities that boost the pro-social voice in the community. A ring-fence budget has also been secured to give pro-social effect to pro-social opportunities, individualized training, education, social enterprise plans for young people embedded in criminal networks who signal that they want to leave. And there's also an intensive family program, which is a high-intensity intervention at family level with very capable practitioners with low caseloads, possibly only 1 to 5 over a long period of time. And this program itself is modeled on a highly effective bail program that we helped to develop with the Department of Children and Youth Affairs over a number of years. The strategic oversight will be provided by a local multi-agency management, and the core of the group will be on Garda Síochána, the probation service, the child TUSLA, and the NGO provider. This group will regulate the balance of the four pillars, but make sure that the program itself is agile. Accepting that the complex environment, that the environment is complex, this is what amounts to a good evidence-informed bet. You can never be certain about these things. This is why we're trialing the approach. There are so many moving parts with wicked problems, but we think that this is the best chance of loading the dice in favor of the children involved. Yellowtown and Whitetown will be our 2 trial locations for the Greentown programme. We are currently undertaking detailed examinations of these networks, which will be the 4th and 5th replications of the twin site method. I'm delighted that our studies have been published and launched by Minister McEntee and Minister of State Brown. It's really important to stress, as both ministers have, that our ability to deliver this new evidence has been hugely supported by An Garda Síochána at national and local level. And I must also thank the many academics, officials, state employees, and community activists who have already supported the work, and we hope will continue to do so. Finally, we have a reasonably small number of children involved in crime networks. Their lives are miserable, and their confinement compounds their misery and the poverty of expectations. They deserve better. Alongside our partners for the next number of years, this is our mission. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Sean. And thanks to everybody, both ministers who have contributed so far. We're going to stay on our live stream on Zoom, but we're actually going to end our live stream on Twitter. So thanks to everybody there who tuned in this afternoon. We'll move on next